Victor Newman's instincts roar to life the moment he senses that the situation with his son has crossed a line from troubling to truly dangerous, triggering a chain reaction that sends shockwaves through the entire family as he urgently calls Nikki back home, convinced that Nick is spiraling in a way that could have devastating and irreversible consequences. What begins as quiet concern quickly escalates into full-blown alarm as Victor pieces together the signs: Nick's erratic behavior, his growing instability, and the subtle but undeniable indications that he is losing control under the weight of everything he has been facing. For Victor, this is not just another family crisis. It is a threat to the very foundation of the Newman legacy, and he refuses to stand by while one of his own self-destructs. Nikki, who has seen Nick through countless struggles before, feels the urgency in Victor's voice and knows immediately that this is different, that whatever is happening now is far more volatile and unpredictable than anything they have dealt with in the past. Her return is not just about offering comfort, it is about intervention, about grounding Nick before he reaches a point of no return. Meanwhile, Nick's internal battle intensifies, his emotions swinging wildly as pressure, guilt, and unresolved trauma collide in a storm that he can no longer contain. His actions become increasingly reckless, alienating those who care about him and pushing him further into isolation, even as he desperately needs support. The spiral is not a sudden collapse but a slow, painful unraveling, marked by moments of anger, denial, and fleeting clarity that only make his downward trajectory more heartbreaking to witness. Victor, ever the strategist, begins to take control in the only way he knows how, decisively and without hesitation, determined to impose order on a situation that feels dangerously close to chaos. Yet, even his commanding presence may not be enough this time, as Nick's struggle is not something that can be fixed through power or influence alone. Nikki's role becomes crucial as she attempts to reach the son she knows so well, searching for a way to break through the walls he has built around himself, reminding him of who he is beneath the pain and confusion. At the same time, the rest of the family watches anxiously, aware that Nick's breakdown could have ripple effects that extend far beyond his own life, threatening relationships, trust, and the fragile balance they have all fought to maintain. The tension builds with every passing moment as Victor's urgency clashes with Nikki's empathy, creating a dynamic where strength and compassion must work together if there is any hope of saving Nick from himself. In this emotionally charged storyline, control becomes an illusion, and the real battle lies in whether love, loyalty, and resilience can pull someone back from the edge before it is too late, or whether Nick's spiral will force the Newmans to confront a loss they are not prepared to face. Nick's downward spiral does not slow, it deepens, intensifies, and begins to take on a life of its own, as if every attempt to stabilize him only fuels the chaos raging inside. What makes it even more terrifying for those around him is that there are flashes, brief, almost cruel moments, where Nick seems like himself again, where clarity breaks through the storm in his mind and he recognizes the damage he's causing. But those moments never last. They slip away just as quickly as they come, leaving behind an even more volatile version of him, one driven by desperation, anger, and a sense that he is rapidly losing control over his own life. For Victor, watching this unfold is both infuriating and deeply unsettling. He has built his life on control, on the belief that any problem can be managed, contained, or conquered with enough force and precision. But this is different. This is his son unraveling in a way that cannot be negotiated with or strategically dismantled. It is raw, emotional, and unpredictable, and that makes it a threat Victor cannot easily neutralize. Nikki, on the other hand, approaches Nick with a different kind of urgency, one rooted not in control, but in connection. She sees past the anger and the erratic behavior, recognizing the pain underneath, the fear, and the overwhelming pressure that has been building inside him for far too long. When she finally comes face to face with Nick, the moment is charged with emotion. There is no immediate breakthrough, no dramatic reconciliation. Instead, there is resistance. Nick lashes out, defensive and guarded, unwilling or perhaps unable to accept the help being offered to him. He sees their concern as interference, their attempts to reach him as a form of control, and that perception only pushes him further away. Yet Nikki refuses to give up. She knows that reaching him will not be easy, that it may take time, patience, and a willingness to endure his anger without retreating. Victor's approach, however, is far less patient. As the situation escalates, he begins to consider more drastic measures. To him, the risk of doing nothing far outweighs the consequences of taking decisive action. Whether that means forcing Nick into a controlled environment, cutting off the influences that are feeding his spiral, or leveraging his power to create distance between Nick and whatever or whoever is contributing to his downfall, Victor is prepared to act. This creates a growing tension between him and Nikki, whose methods rely on understanding and emotional support rather than force. Their shared goal is the same, to save their son, but their paths to achieving it could not be more different, and that conflict threatens to complicate an already fragile situation. Meanwhile, the ripple effects of Nick's behavior begin to spread outward, touching everyone in his orbit. Those who care about him find themselves caught in a painful limbo, unsure of how to help, afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing, and yet unable to stand by and watch him self-destruct. Relationships strain under the weight of uncertainty, as trust is tested and loyalties are pushed to their limits. Some begin to question whether Nick can truly be pulled back from the edge, while others cling to hope, refusing to believe that he is beyond saving. At the same time, there is an undercurrent of danger that continues to build beneath the surface. Nick's vulnerability does not exist in isolation. It creates opportunities for those who might seek to exploit it. The choices he makes in this unstable state could have consequences far beyond his personal struggles, potentially drawing him deeper into situations that threaten not only his well-being, but also the safety of those around him. Victor is acutely aware of this, and it only strengthens his resolve to intervene, even if it means crossing lines that others might hesitate to approach. As the days pass, the situation reaches a critical point. Nick's actions become increasingly reckless, culminating in a moment that forces everyone to confront the reality of just how far things have gone. It is a turning point, one that cannot be ignored or brushed aside. For Nikki, it is a moment of heartbreak, a painful confirmation of her fears. For Victor, it is the justification he needs to take full control of the situation, to implement whatever measures he believes are necessary to protect his son, regardless of the backlash. And yet, even in the midst of this crisis, there remains a question that lingers in the background. Will control be enough? Can force and authority truly pull someone back from the brink, or will it only drive them further away? Nikki believes the answer lies in compassion, in reaching Nick on a level that goes beyond surface behavior and taps into the core of who he is. Victor, however, is not convinced that such an approach will be sufficient, not when the stakes are this high, not when the risk of losing Nick feels so real. Nick himself stands at the center of it all, caught between these opposing forces, struggling to find his footing in a world that suddenly feels unstable and unforgiving. His journey is not just about survival, it is about identity, about whether he can reclaim the part of himself that is being consumed by this spiral. The path forward is uncertain, filled with obstacles and difficult choices, and there is no guarantee of a positive outcome. What is clear, however, is that this moment will define everything that comes next. It will shape relationships, alter perceptions, and leave a lasting impact on everyone involved. Whether it leads to healing or further depends on the choices that are made in the heat of the crisis, on the balance between strength and empathy, and on whether Nick can find the strength within himself to fight his way back. The aftermath of that critical turning point does not bring immediate relief. Instead, it ushers in an even more fragile and unpredictable phase where every decision feels heavier, every word carries consequence, and every silence becomes unbearable. Nick finds himself standing in the wreckage of his own choices, aware now, painfully aware of how far he has fallen, yet still struggling to gather the strength required to climb back up. That awareness becomes both a blessing and a curse. It gives him clarity, but it also burdens him with guilt, and that guilt threatens to pull him right back under. The people around him begin to realize that this is not a battle that can be won in a single moment of realization. It is a process, slow, uneven, and filled with setbacks. Victor does not ease his grip on the situation. If anything, he tightens it, convinced that structure and control are the only things preventing total collapse. He begins putting safeguards in place, limiting Nick's freedom in subtle, but undeniable ways, ensuring that he is never too far from watchful eyes, never given the opportunity to slip back into destructive patterns unnoticed. To Victor, this is protection. To Nick, however, it begins to feel like suffocation. That tension simmers beneath every interaction between them, creating an unspoken battle of wills. Nick resents the control, even if part of him understands the intention behind it. Victor, in turn, refuses to back down, unwilling to risk his son's life for the sake of comfort or autonomy. Nikki continues to serve as the emotional bridge between them, navigating the delicate balance between support and accountability. She spends hours with Nick, talking to him, listening to him, reminding him, gently but persistently, that he is not alone, that he is not beyond redemption. There are moments when her words seem to reach him, when the anger fades and something softer takes its place. In those moments, hope flickers. But the road is far from smooth. There are setbacks, sharp, painful ones, that test Nikki's resolve and force her to confront the reality that love alone may not be enough to heal what is broken. As Nick begins to confront the consequences of his actions, the outside world does not pause to give him time to recover. The pressures that contributed to his spiral are still there, waiting for him, demanding attention. Business responsibilities, personal relationships, unresolved conflicts, they all press in on him, threatening to overwhelm him once again. The difference now is that he is not facing them from a place of confidence or stability, but from a place of vulnerability. Every challenge feels magnified, every setback more personal. There is also the lingering shadow of those who might take advantage of his weakened state. The danger has not disappeared, it has simply shifted, becoming less visible but no less real. Victor remains hyper-aware of this, his instincts constantly on alert, anticipating threats before they can materialize. This vigilance creates an atmosphere of tension, where even moments of calm feel temporary, as though something could go wrong at any second. Meanwhile, relationships across the board begin to evolve in response to what has happened. Some grow stronger, forged in the fire of shared crisis. Others fracture, unable to withstand the strain. Trust becomes a central theme: who can be trusted, who cannot, and whether trust, once broken, can ever truly be restored. Nick's relationships are particularly affected. He must face the reality that his actions have hurt people, that rebuilding those connections will require more than apologies, it will require consistency, effort, and time. There are moments when Nick questions whether he is capable of that. Whether he has the strength to not only change, but to maintain that change. Those doubts are dangerous, because they open the door to relapse, to the temptation of giving up rather than continuing to fight. It is in those moments that the support of those around him becomes most critical. Nikki's unwavering presence, Victor's relentless protection, even when it feels overbearing, serve as anchors, keeping him from drifting too far. Yet, the journey is not just about external support. At its core, it is about Nick finding something within himself worth holding on to. A reason to fight. A belief that he is more than his mistakes, more than the chaos that has defined this chapter of his life. That realization does not come easily. It is something he must arrive at on his own, through reflection, through struggle, and through a willingness to confront the parts of himself he has been trying to avoid. As time moves forward, there are small victories. Subtle changes that might go unnoticed by an outsider, but mean everything to those who understand the depth of the struggle. A moment of restraint where there once would have been recklessness. A decision made with clarity instead of impulse. A conversation handled with honesty instead of deflection. These moments begin to add up, forming the foundation of something that could eventually become stability. Victor notices these changes, though he rarely acknowledges them openly. For him, the focus remains on maintaining control, on ensuring that progress is not undone. Nikki, however, celebrates these moments quietly, offering encouragement without pressure, reinforcing the idea that progress, no matter how small, is still progress. Despite these positive signs, the story does not move toward a neat or easy resolution. There are still unresolved tensions, still questions that linger, still challenges that lie ahead. Nick's journey is ongoing, and there is no guarantee of where it will lead. What is certain is that he is no longer standing at the exact same place where he began. He has moved, perhaps not as far as he or others might hope, but enough to suggest that change is possible. And in a world where control, power, and legacy often take center stage, this deeply personal battle becomes something else entirely, a reminder that even the strongest individuals can falter, that even those who seem unbreakable can reach a point where they need help. It becomes a story not just about crisis, but about resilience, about the fragile, difficult process of rebuilding, and about the enduring question of whether a person can truly overcome the forces that threaten to consume them. As the dust settles, at least temporarily, the Newman family stands altered but not destroyed. The cracks are still there, visible and unresolved, but so too is the determination to move forward, to learn from what has happened, and to face whatever comes next with a deeper understanding of what is truly at stake. Nick remains at the center of that journey, not as a symbol of failure, but as a testament to the complexity of being human, flawed, vulnerable, and yet still capable of change. As the fragile stability around Nick continues to settle into something resembling routine, it becomes clear that normal will never fully return, at least not the version everyone once knew. Instead, life around him adapts into a cautious rhythm, where every step forward is measured and every emotional shift is quietly monitored by those who love him most. Nick himself feels that difference every day. He wakes up with the lingering awareness that his life is now being rebuilt, not from scratch, but from fragments, some intact, some damaged, and some still missing entirely. The weight of that reality follows him into every interaction, every conversation, and every attempt to reclaim control over his own identity. Victor remains as present as ever, though his approach has evolved slightly. While he still maintains a strong sense of oversight, there are moments where even he seems to recognize that force alone cannot sustain recovery. His control is still there, woven into the structure of Nick's daily life, but it is now paired with a reluctant acknowledgement that emotional recovery cannot be commanded the way business deals can. That realization does not soften Victor's personality, but it does add complexity to his decisions. He begins to delegate small freedoms back to Nick, testing whether responsibility can be reintroduced without triggering another collapse. Nikki, however, becomes the emotional center of Nick's world during this period. She is the one who encourages him to speak about what he is feeling, even when he resists. She is the one who reminds him that setbacks do not erase progress, and that healing is not a straight line. Her presence becomes a stabilizing force, not because she demands change, but because she allows space for it to happen naturally. Nick begins to rely on her presence in ways he does not always openly admit. In her, he finds a rare sense of safety, something that does not feel like judgment or control, but understanding. Despite these supports, Nick's internal struggle is far from resolved. The echoes of his spiral still linger, surfacing at unexpected moments. A familiar stressor, a sudden confrontation, or even a quiet moment alone can trigger waves of doubt that threaten to undo his progress. He becomes increasingly aware that recovery is not just about avoiding another collapse, it is about learning how to exist in a world where the risk of falling still remains. That awareness can be both empowering and terrifying, because it means he is no longer blind to the danger, but also never fully free from it. Outside of Nick's immediate circle, the Newman family dynamic begins to shift in subtle but meaningful ways. The crisis has exposed vulnerabilities that cannot be easily ignored, forcing each member to reassess their roles within the family structure. Victor's authority, while still dominant, is no longer unquestioned. Nikki's emotional intelligence becomes more central to decision-making discussions, even when Victor resists it. And Nick himself, once seen primarily as someone needing protection, begins to slowly reassert his independence, even if only in small gestures at first. Those small gestures matter more than anyone initially realizes. A decision made without hesitation. A conversation handled without escalation. A moment of restraint where conflict once would have erupted. These are the building blocks of trust being rebuilt, not just self-trust, but trust from others who are watching closely to see whether Nick's progress is real or temporary. Every positive sign is met with cautious optimism, as if the family collectively understands that hope must be protected, not assumed. Still, the emotional scars from the spiral do not vanish. They linger beneath the surface, shaping reactions and influencing choices in ways that are not always visible. Nick finds himself more introspective than before, often replaying past events in his mind, analyzing what led him down such a dangerous path. He begins to recognize patterns, stress points, emotional triggers, unresolved conflicts that contributed to his breakdown. This self-awareness becomes a double-edged sword. It helps him avoid certain pitfalls, but it also forces him to relive moments he would rather forget. Victor watches this introspection carefully. While he appreciates Nick's growing awareness, he remains wary of overconfidence. To Victor, awareness is only useful if it translates into discipline. Without structure, he believes, insight can easily become unstable reflection rather than lasting change. As a result, he continues to impose subtle boundaries, ensuring that Nick's environment remains controlled enough to prevent relapse, but not so restrictive that it stifles independence entirely. The balance between freedom and control becomes one of the central tensions of this new phase. Nick pushes for more autonomy, believing that trust must eventually be restored in full if he is to truly recover. Victor pushes back, arguing that trust must be earned gradually and protected carefully. Nikki often finds herself mediating between these two perspectives, trying to ensure that neither control nor freedom becomes extreme enough to undo the progress they have made. Amid this ongoing tension, there are moments of genuine connection that remind everyone why the effort matters. Family dinners that feel slightly less strained than before. Conversations that do not end in conflict.